So welcome to the course. Now, I do want to say right off the bat, if you have not purchased some sort of PC or Android tablet where you can actually put some sort of 3D piece of software on it, or a laptop, do not worry about it. I really did set this course up for you to just watch if you don't have any of that stuff, because 3D can get expensive. Even though Blender is free and many of the add-ons are absolutely free, there are things that you pay for a little bit. I have a pretty good rule of thumb when it comes to add-ons for Blender. I try not to go above 50 bucks. That doesn't mean anything to you right now, but just something to keep in mind. Once in a while, there's something extraordinary that comes along, and I absolutely will spend the money on that, depending on if it suits my needs. Now, this may be your first time ever learning online. This may be your first time ever taking a look at anything. There is nothing that you have to download. You can download Unreal Engine. You can also download Blender. And I know one of the assignments will be just to download Blender. I don't want you to feel like you have to download anything, because you do not. You might just be looking at this on your phone, and that's absolutely fine. Let's go over some stuff here. Over right here, this is your player. Now, within 3D, there we go. That's my wonderful voice that you're hearing now. If we take a look at the player down here, if I am right here, if I click onto where it says playback rate, you can change the speed of my voice. If I am talking too slow or talking too fast. If you want to add a note, you can do it right there. The settings, this will eventually be 1080p. And I recently just uploaded all the videos. It just takes some time for them to do that. And you can go full screen. If you want to skip over anything, you could just click these and it'll mark it as complete. And down here, this Q&A section, this is where you can ask questions. So you can ask a new question, and you can do that. Now, I know in the very beginning, Udemy asks you, hey, you want to give the course a rating, et cetera, et cetera. You can just hold off on that if you want to, and just wait until you at least get into the course and decide whether you enjoy my instruction or not. Absolutely honest reviews 100% help me. If you guys do have a question, then please go ahead and ask, because to be quite honest, I believe I've covered everything that a beginner should know before they get into 3D. But you may have a question. I do not want you to feel at any point like you can't ask me a question. As I said in my rather long trailer, I didn't know what a normal was. I didn't know the difference between a material. I didn't know. I kept hearing people talk about meshes, and I kept hearing them talk about, oh, well, this is the geometry, the model, I'm like, what do you mean? And what is a primitive? What are all of these things? So, and instead of me just going down some glossary list, I try to mix in everything and make this as entertaining as possible. I try to be as engaging as possible. And if you've never had any course of mine or have had me as an instructor, I do respond. My response time is taking a little bit longer these days because there are just simply way more students. At this point, I'm over 100,000 students, so just please bear with me. It might be 2 weeks before I can get back. I'm usually pretty good, but sometimes it does happen. But yes, please go ahead and you can ask questions. And yeah, you can ask questions. And I think that's about it. I know it's kind of a weird introduction, but again, thanks a lot for checking out the course. You don't have to by the end of this course, I don't want you to feel, if you feel like, you know what, I could probably hold off on 3D, that's why I made the course. Or, hey, you know what, I don't have to know everything in 3D, I'm just really interested in sculpting. I've told this to my students before. I got some pretty high level 3D training in the past, and it was more, I was going to go on a track to become a 3D animator, but I found out that I didn't like to animate in 3D. I don't. I like to animate in 2D. But I was very thankful to have that experience because it boosted my confidence. I know how I like to use 3D, and I really do enjoy sculpting in 3D, but I like to use 3D for storytelling. That's what I learn a lot of these skills for. So I don't want you guys to think that also that you have to follow some specific track like, oh, I have to be a modeler, I have to be a sculptor, I have to be an animator. If you are an independent minded person, and if you are an independent creative, you can use 3D in whichever way you want to, or you can choose not to use 3D. If you just want to learn how to use Unreal Engine or Twinmotion or Dash Studio to create your own reference that you can draw from, then you go ahead and do that. There are no rules. There are no rules to your creativity. And if you felt like you've never been creative before, then let this be your starting point. Thank you so much for checking this out. I look forward to your feedback, and I'll see you in the next video. All right. Within 3D, 2Ds we have workflows, and 3Ds you also have workflows, but often you'll hear the word pipeline. Don't worry, I'm not going to do the entire course like this. We're going to look at some software and look at examples, and we're going to go through some things. But I thought it was important in the very beginning to take a look so that you can get an overall idea, because there's just so much software out there. And what do you pay for? What do you not pay for? What is exactly like this other piece of software? These are very big questions that we're going to answer. So let's just say that we want to start with, you have an idea. You have an idea, and maybe you want to make your own 3D animated cartoon. Well, from here, from the idea, maybe you got some stuff written down, got a few pages done. From writing this stuff down, you write some things down and you want to create, maybe you got an idea and you got a character. It's your character right there. And so now you got an idea and you got a few characters. It's going to be your cartoon. Well, your animated movie. So you got these characters, and you get yourself an artist, or maybe you're an artist yourself, and you got your main character, you got your cast, and maybe you've even gotten some environments. Maybe you got a few sketches done, and that's cool. But we want to animate this. So now what do? Well, what you're going to need to do is you're going to have to take all of this, and we want to make this into a 3D, let's just say movie. Well, all these characters, from here, it's always a good idea. Let's start with our character. Our character right here, we want to probably do some sort of turnaround, which means front, side, and a back view. Because what we want to do is we want to take that turnaround and we want to model it into a 3D model. This is 3D. I'm putting all these lines on here. We want to turn this into a 3D model. So now we have a model. We have a base model. And there are a few different ways to do this, but now we have a model. And now we want to model some environments in 3D. So I'm just going to do this because this is kind of representing our 3D environment. So we have this. We got some environments, and then we eventually want to put the character inside of that environment. And after we put the character inside the environment, well, it's a 3D movie, so we need to actually do what's called rigging that character if we want to make it move, because right now it's just standing there. It doesn't do anything, right? So we want to put a rig. There's this little skeleton. We want to rig this. So we rig. So we got model. This is another model. And maybe say this is our test shot. We rendered that little test shot out of our character standing in the environment, but we got to make a move, so we have to rig it. And then from rigging, this character is now going to move. There's our character moving. Yay, character's moving. And after you rig it, that means that you animate it. It's a lot to it, and I'm very much simplifying this. So we're animating. There's all other kinds of stuff that we got to deal with. Like we got to light it. We got different kinds of lights that we can use. And that's just getting into a little bit of the animation. So that's one basic pipeline. But if we look at this model, there's some other things we got to do here. We got to add some sort of texture onto it, because the model, this is just a plain looking model. We got to add some color to it. We got to get color. We may have to add clothing. Going to have to add hair. And there are other various textures that we can add. Now, the way that we want to model this, if it's for a game or it's animated, as of now, because Unreal Engine seems to be changing a lot of things, and yes, you can make movies in Unreal Engine, you can either polygon model it, is what you're going to need to do, or initially you'll probably need to sculpt it. So 3D sculpt it. So there's polygon modeling, and that's when you hear about things like poly count. You also hear it there too. But 3D sculpting is more likely what's called high res, which means high resolution. And high resolution, trying to animate that, you cannot. So you can 3D sculpt something and have 3 million polygons, but you can't animate that. You can't put it into a video game. So your pipeline is your process, your workflow. Your pipeline is what happens next. And this is just an example. So with that said, just to give you an overview, there are many different things that you can do when it comes to 3D. You can use 3D for reference if you're a 2D artist. You can also use it for your backgrounds if you're a 2D artist. Backgrounds, characters, creatures. And I said reference, but it also can be photo reference. Right? You can animate. You can make movies. You can make TV, television shows. And that, by TV, I do mean like whatever streaming service it is. You can make games. You can do commercial work, meaning you actually can make commercials with 3D. There's also different parts of 3D like visual effects, There's compositing, putting everything together. And you can also mix live action with 3D. So it's a very big topic. And more than likely, more oftentimes than not, someone will specialize in something. Someone will just do lighting. Someone will just, and these, when you get to these bigger companies, this person's in charge of lighting, maybe color. This person does modeling. This person is an animator. And they may just be in charge of animating one character. So there's a lot going on with 3D. And this isn't even getting into some of the other things that I'll show you that different softwares can do. There's all kinds of things. There's all kinds of crime scene recreations. There is crime reenactments. There are simulations that you can run. There's 3D is such a huge, broad topic. But I'm suspecting that most of you are here because you more than likely want to make some 3D models. Probably you either want to make some sort of show, TV, movie, or you want to make a video game. And so we're going to stick to those tools and stick to those things. This is not about AutoCAD, which is also 3D, because I am not an architect. With that said, what I want to do is jump in to the very next video and just explain the basic concept that almost all of this is made out of with polygons and polygon modeling. So I'll see you in the next video. We'll do another quick little Blackboard video here on the polygon modeling so that you can understand, and then I'm going to show you an example. See you in the next video. So back in the day, when you were a kid, we had dot-to-dot little activities, and you would connect the dots, right? You would connect the dots, and then you would make a picture. Now, if I did this and said, I want you to connect these dots. Well, all of these right here, well, these are dots. And in order to make a dot, you make a line, you make another line, and you make another line, you make another line. And this is, well, this is a square. Now we can make this any shape that we want, right? And let's say that after you connected the dots, you colored it in. Well, this is pretty much the same concept as polygons and polygon modeling, except we can now do this. We are connecting, we are using lines, we're using dots to connect one dot to another dot to make a line, and our lines are going to make up surfaces. Now, this is a box, as you can see, but then if I want to take it to the next level, let's say that now I want to make it look like a pair of dice. And so I would have to put a dice material over it to make it look like something other than a very plain, make it look like a very plain box. Or I can make it into any other kind of thing I want. I can make this basic shape into a crate. for a video game. If I connect a bunch of them together, I can make other different things with it. Now, the interesting thing about these dots, these dots are called, this is a vertex, or you will see vertices. These lines are called edges because they are defining an edge. Now, if we put these together, this surface are planes. They're also called faces. So that is the basics of polygon modeling. Now, I know that there is voxel modeling, but I've yet to try voxel modeling. Most things are polygon modeling. Even when you get into sculpting software, you're just working with smaller polygons. And so you'll see things to where it's very interesting that when you are polygon modeling, you want everything to be what are called quads, meaning there are four sides, four edges, so they don't have to be like that. They could be four sides that look like that. They could be four, as long as they're four sides, because for some strange reason, when you go to export things or import things into different game engines, or you're going to animate something, they split the quads in half. So that's a quad. They split them in half to make triangles. So triangles. And so when you are cutting polygons, you always want to cut them in half because you want to keep your polys clean. That is the basic concept of a polygon. In the next video, I am going to open up a piece of software called Blender, and I'm going to show you that in real time. I will see you in the next video. So this is Blender, and this is actually Blender 3.0. I have to update this to Blender 3.2, which we are going to be doing. And Blender keeps updating a lot, which is good. Now, all of this looks really super scary. We're not going to worry about any of that. But what I want to do is I'm going to go over here. I'm going to hit Shift A. I'm going to create what's called a mesh. And there's a bunch of different meshes that I can have. But in order to keep this really simple, I want to create, let me see what I want to create here. I don't want the rock generator. Fixed volume. There we go. I was wondering what happened to that. I am going to create a cube. So here we go. This is a 3D cube. Now, if I go up here, this is called a gizmo. I'm going to go over all of this stuff in great detail. Do not worry. But as you can see, we can look through this and see. This is our cube. Now, if I go to this wireframe view, you can see it's in what's called object mode, and you can see the lines here. You can see the edges here. I go, wait a minute, you said there were vertices here. If I go into edit mode, if I zoom in, there are these little dots. Now, we can make these bigger if we want. As a matter of fact, let me do this for clarity's sake. All right, so I went in and I enlarged the vertices so that we can see them a lot clearly. So even up in here, right up there where it says vertex select. So this means that I can select these vertexes. Now, you will also notice, for some of you that work in 2D, you notice that there's this little select arrow right here where I can select things. Now, I can see all the way through this. These are my vertexes. If I want to select this edge here, then I would click the next button, the next little button up here. I'm not going to try and memorize any hotkeys, and I'm selecting these edges, the lines. Now if I want to select the faces, it's giving me this little prompt where I have these little dots, and I just select this, and it is selecting the faces. So if I just select on these little dots, it's going to select the face. And so these are polygons. And if I manipulate these through different means, because I'm in the editing mode here, then so if I want to do this, and I'm doing this with a mouse, by the way. I don't have my my stylus, because I honestly think it's harder to model with a stylus than it is a mouse. Although I always tell my students, if you're going to sculpt, get a stylus and a tablet, and especially if you're going to do 2D art, you cannot draw with the mouse. You can, but you can't. And so there you go. So now I just modeled something. It's not much. I just did a little inset there. And yes, there are hotkeys. So I go E, I go Z, I can extrude that. I can actually lock it to the Z. So I just made a little model, we changed it. So now what's going on is that I have way more polygons. All of these different polygons. I have all these different faces now. So that's a face like we had before. But now if I zoom out, that's a face. If you look right up in here, that's another face. So is that one, and so on. So these are polygons, and this is how you essentially model. Now there's different ways to view. This is the viewport. We can look at it. This is the solid shading mode. Right next to it, there's a material preview, although we really don't have materials on it right now, but we can. And over here, this is the rendered mode, meaning it's going to do some rendering and do its best to make it look as nice as possible. Now I'm in edit mode also. You actually want to be in object mode. So now you're like, wait a minute, that looks totally different. There are no lights or anything. So this is a polygon. This is what everything is made out of with these little squares here. Everything. And so let's see. Oh, I forgot. I have to, I got to update my library here, which I got to do that later on. But we can see, so I'm going to open up something for you guys really quick. Then I'll get out of here. Let me pause real quick. Okay, so what we see here, this is a base mesh. This figure right here. This figure is a base mesh. So I'm going to get rid of this. So I'm going to zoom in here. Now, if it comes in, it looks like this. You guys have probably seen something like this before. Why is it called a base mesh? It is a base that you can make your characters. I can sculpt on top of this. I can polygon model these. I can manipulate these with by polygon modeling. I can smooth this out and sculpt my own character on top of it. But where do I get the word mesh from? Well, a mesh is like a net. And many times, these 3D models are referred to as 3D meshes. And if you said 3D model, no one will look at you like, what? What are you talking about? These are meshes. But if we zoom in, now if we zoom back out, this looks pretty solid. But if we zoom in, and this is almost always called wireframe view because it looks like a series of wireframes. If we turn this around now, this base mesh, you can see that all of these are a bunch of little quads. They're not perfect squares, but they all have 4 sides to them. And let's if we zoom in to this area over here, let's go into edit mode here. So I'm looking at this particular quad right here. This is a quad that has 4 sides. So does this. So does that. If I zoom out and just pick something at random, everything that I'm highlighting is going to have 4 sides. And this is often referred to as clean geometry. They want it to be clean because all of these, I can run a diagonal line through it and create triangles, which I believe it just makes it easier for different animation and production software to process. Now, I don't know all the exact science of it, but I know that when your polygons, when your polys are not quads, meaning 4 sides, then you're going to get distortion, you're going to get these glitchy looking figures, and that's what's going to happen. Let's go back into object mode. And so this would be a rendered view, and there's no lighting in there, so there's really nothing to render because I didn't add any lights. So that is an example of a polygon. So you can see that this is a polygon. It's a little bit more elaborate than a box, obviously, but it's made out of the same things. This is how we get 3D modeling. Even if we go into a very complex piece of software like ZBrush, and I don't know if this mesh is going to let me sculpt over it. Let's find out. So let me sculpt a little bit. That's cool. So now I just sculpted over this, right? I didn't add up enough whatever, but I just kind of sculpted. This is very low poly, and so that's horrible. Something out of The Last of Us or something. But if I go back into wireframe mode, you can see that I distorted this. And so I would want to take this and I would want to add, probably remesh that to make it a little bit cleaner. Oh, don't worry, you'll figure out, well, not figure out, I'm going to tell you what all that stuff is. So this is an example of polygons and how they make up pretty much everything in 3D. All right, hope you learned something. I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to see you in the very next video. So your first assignment is to go to blender.org and download Blender. I'm going to talk you through it. Do not go to blender.com unless you want to buy a blender. I mean, if you do, that's cool. I'm not judging you. I have 2 blenders. I have a very expensive Vitamix, and I have another one. So I'm all for blenders. I am all for fresh fruits and vegetables being consumed by human beings. It's good stuff. But that's neither here nor there. You want to go to blender.org. Because I did that because I know someone's going to go to blender.com. Be like, oh, I went to blender.com. There's no software there. You're a terrible teacher. All right, so we're going to go to blender.com. Now, you're probably looking at this. Now, depending on when you're looking at this, I should say this could say 3.3. This could say 3.4. So let's look at what's on the horizon. So I'm going to go here. I don't want you to download anything just yet. I want to go to, where are they? Development updates, open source. Blender's an awesome community, by the way. And then I'm going to show you everything, some of the things that Blender can do. They got it right on the website, which is awesome. So let's go to download. We're going to go to the download page. Now, what I am going to do is, this is the current version of Blender. That's what we want to download, whatever the current version is. That's download. This is the other download. So I am looking for what is on the horizon because Blender is very good about builds. Now, you're like, what is a build? What is a build? So check this out. So you can download it for Windows, for Mac, and for Linux. So my Linux peeps out there, don't worry, you can download Blender. So right now, when it says release candidate, you're wondering why there are so many of these. Well, some people started working on their projects at Blender 2.83, and they don't want to go ahead and they don't want to go to the brand new version of Blender. So we are going to download 3.2 right now. It is July 4th as I'm recording this of 2022. This is the newest release candidate. We can download this if you're on a Mac OS. You can get there's a preview where it says alpha. It's not in beta yet, just like any other software. Also, there appear to be different versions for if you have an Intel Mac, which I still have an Intel MacBook. I also have a PC. Obviously, I'm on a PC. But there's also an Apple Silicon version, so that's also important to know. So the alpha, it's still being tested. We want to download the latest in Linux. It's the same thing. So 3.3 is going to be the next version that's going to be released. But if we go to the main page, it says download 3.2, the Windows installer. So what we're going to do, that's what I have. I have the Windows installer. I'm going to download this. And it says, you are breathtaking. Now it's downloading. And you're going to download it like you do anything else. And they got some stuff up here. Learn the basics. Pablo, who is, I think it's Pablo Navarro, who's awesome, does a weekly live stream telling you about all the new stuff that's coming up and everything. That's why the community is so amazing, and there are so many tools for Blender. That is why many people use it. Okay, so I've downloaded this. And also, just to let you know, well, what can Blender do? Well, with Blender, Blender has its own ecosystem and all other stuff. There's a render engine. Don't worry about that. Modeling and sculpting UV. I showed you a little bit of that. You can do VFX. You can also animate and do rigging, meaning you're going to put a skeleton inside the animation. You can do 2D and 3D art, or you can draw 2D and 3D. With Grease Pencil, my own personal take is that I'm not hugely a big fan of Grease Pencil. I think there are just other pieces of software that just do some things a little bit better. But that's just my own opinion. And also, you can write your own scripts for Blender, as many people do. There are lots of resources. We will get into that. This is not a Blender course, but I do want you to download it to perhaps get over some of your fear of Blender. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit pause. I'm just going to click on and I'm going to open this up. So I'm going to hit pause. So I just remembered something as I was going to install it, because I didn't want to hang up the recording of this, but I do think that this is important because this does pop up, and I'll show you what. I'm just going to hit pause one more time, and I got to go get, it's in my download folder. Okay, so now here we go. So I want to show you guys something, and hopefully this, okay, so I'm going to accept the terms. Next. I'll go next. And I'm going to hit install. Watch this, so because I know this may freak some people out, especially being new to 3D. We're just going to wait. It's going to take a second. And I'll give you guys my specs on everything. So check this out. So you see that? That looks really, it may look a little fishy to you, like, whoa, wait a minute, what is this? Why doesn't it say blender.msi? I don't know why, but that's how Blender uploads. It's a verified publisher, Stitching Blender Foundation. Do you want to make changes? You might even get a security warning, but it does look really strange like that. So I'm just going to hit yes, and we're going to install it. We are going to install Blender. It's not going to break anything. You're not going to hurt anything. And so I'm just going to let it finish installing. I'm just going to pause because I don't want it to take all day. Okay, so you're seeing my secret desktop here. You can see I got a little icon right here. I'm going to click onto my icon. Oh, wait, now it's opening on my second screen. It's opening on my other screen here. I got to So now we're just going to download it. We're not going to do anything right now because I just want to have Blender set. I just want to have this there. It looks super intimidating, but English, that's my first language. Shortcuts will leave everything as is. Spacebar play, don't worry about that. I have Blender dark. I'm just going to say save new. Now I can load 3.0, but we're not. I'm just going to have everything the same way that you guys will have it. This looks really small. I am on a 2K monitor, so don't worry about that. Just going to save new settings. And it gives us a little menu up here. General, 2D animation, open, manual, and all this other stuff. I'm just going to click off of it. We have a camera. We have our camera. We have the cube. It's default. And we have a light. The reason why we have a light is that when we go under render view, now my viewport looked a little bit different there, and we're just gonna show you some stuff in here, but not right now. Again, beginner 3D course. I want to give you guys the bigger picture of everything because I think it's important for you to see a variety of software. All right, I'm gonna stop talking. This was assignment 1. Just download Blender. Don't do anything yet. Please don't do anything. This software can be so complicated. And in right down here in the corner, in the very corner, it'll say 3.2. Now, where my little, this is the my cursor. If I go way down into the bottom right corner, it's going to say 3.2.0. That's the version that I have. That means that it is the most stable version of Blender. All right, I'm going to stop talking and I will see you in the next video. So this is Godot game engine. Now in the beginning I said I'm going to, we're going to download it for fun and everything, but we're not. Now I've done the investigation on this because I wanted to check out Godot game engine, but I got this. Windows protected your PC. Now, I have never really heard of too much of people having any sort of Godot having a virus. It's open source. However, since it is open source, we're just not going to risk that for our PCs. I'm going to I already have Unreal Engine 5, and I'm just going to talk you through some of that stuff there. I may even have to which you probably have already seen me saying, hold off on downloading Godot engine. Yeah, so I'm not gonna risk this. So I'm just gonna, like, this. It seems like it would be very cool and it's a very simple user interface. However, I don't feel comfortable with downloading this, so I am just going to delete the file. Sometimes and I'm being transparent about that because this is the kind of stuff you will run into. If you don't feel comfortable with anything that you are going to download, then don't. Don't do it. Even if you look it up and people are like, oh, well, it's a false positive, or just don't, use your common sense. I'm sure that Godot is fine. I'm sure that there is nothing wrong with it. But again, I don't feel comfortable with it. And I don't feel comfortable by telling you this or by having you download something, especially when we can just use Unreal and you could just follow along by watching the videos. So I wanted to make this video, and I'm probably going to put this in the very beginning of my probably in the very beginning of the course to say we're not going to download this. All right, so there you go.